Hello!
Welcome! I'm Mary Thaler.
And I'm Geoffrey Edwards. Welcome to Writing Off the Deep End.
So today we have an episode on names and naming.
Yes, another favourite topic, although we have lots of favourites.
So, names is, we're telling stories, we have characters, we have settings, we have places, and all of them need names. You were writing you were telling a story that's set thousands of years into our future and on the other side of the galaxy, perhaps. Right. So names are part of the signifier of that difference. Right.
So I feel that, in the future, all of our cultures will have mixed. And so I often pick names of characters where the first name is from one culture and the second name is from a different culture, because I think those kinds of mixings will happen.
Yeah. Do you have to have the names for your characters before you can start writing?
I have a certain number that I have done and prepared ahead of time.
Okay.
But then others, you come along and then you realize that you need a new character to do something, and then you need a name for the character. And so there are sort of add-ons that come into it as you go along.
Do you ever stall on it? Sometimes I'll be writing and the flow is really good and a new character comes in and I haven't thought of a name for them yet, and suddenly everything just gets bogged down. And
because I don't allow myself to get stalled. I give them a kind of a working name.
Okay.
And then I use that for a little time and while I'm thinking about how I want them to be named, or how they feel themselves they should be named.
Yeah. Right. The character gets some say.
The character gets some say. They usually have a fairly strong idea of what things should be, right? And how about yourself? Is it similar for you, or?
Well, like I said, it's something that I work hard at, because I do tend to stall out on names. It's not something I feel I have an innate gift for, and so I have to work at it. And hopefully that work pays off, and the reader never even suspects that I spent hours agonizing over what to call that person. I mean, what I'm writing right now is historical fiction, and so I get a lot of a lot of the work is done for me, because if they're real characters, then I can actually go and look them up on the manifest of the ship. Where I have had to invent names is for the characters which wouldn't have been named in those official documents, and so those are my non-human characters, dogs, things like that. But even there, I've been able to track down their names.
Even for the science fiction, when I'm looking for names, I will dig up the dictionaries or the name lists on the net for Finnish names or Thai names or whatever, and then I'll pick names as partly because I'm looking at meanings of the names, because they matter for me. So I did that for the Polish names that I had for the for this historical piece that I was working on.
And names don't just have a geographic origin; they have names rise and fall in popularity.
That's true.
Over time, so you're probably going to have to think about what names were common in the 1940s.
I did look into that. Age. So there are certain Polish names that are quite common today, but wouldn't have been used so much in that time. So that was certainly part of the research. Yeah. You've done texts in Lapland or this kind of thing, haven't you? Or even the Viking one, where you had to come up with some names for that.
Well,
I'd be curious how you did that.
Well, actually, when I was trying to write in Anglo-Saxon meter, a big driver for choosing names there was that I had to make them alliterate. And so I would get to a line and I needed a name that started with V. That was why Valka was named Valka. She used it to be Valka the Valorous.
The metric worked.
And Ulfhildr, I just needed a lot of things that would alliterate with H. Now that I think back, I think I really liked the suggestion of the word wolf. I mean, she was a powerful and somewhat vicious woman, and I liked being able to evoke a wolfishness in her character. But her husband, Thorsten, definitely had another name, and it was just too hard. I can't remember what it was, but it was too hard for me to match up
Okay.
with the alliteration, so I gave him the name Thorsten.
So what about settings? Settings is also... So place names.
Place names. Place names.
So again, it's research, I guess, for the work that you do.
I don't often make up my settings to the same extent that
you would
do.
In science fiction, right? So,
yeah. But I know that that's a major thing for you. For you, the whole world has to be created.
Has to be named. So I do invent completely new words in some cases.
Yeah.
But I have to say that I often use a kind of a wink at existing writers or books, or so. For instance, I have a series of planets which I call the moon Gomrath, which is taken from Alan Garner's work on fantasy and science fiction. So I sort of wink at different writers, and I've done the same for scientists and
I think there can be a rationale for that because, of course, our names are rooted in our histories or the history of the place. And so if you are imagining a future whose history is our present, then these roots that go back and ones that people don't even, the people living in the future wouldn't even grasp the full connection. But that sense of continuity that you can give with a name is, I think, something pretty powerful. Yeah. Oh, I wanted to ask you about names. Of course, are very tied also to the language that we're speaking, and so not only we have to give names to people, we give names to things and concepts in science fiction and fantasy.
Right, that's true. So I have my own glossary, for instance, in the science fiction story of things that I've named.
Yeah. And are the people in your book speaking English?
I think they are.
Okay.
Because it's very far future. So
right.
I imagine the language would have shifted. And there are some writers who play with that and actually sort of show you a shifted language. But I kind of feel that if you shift it too far, your reader's not going to want to make the effort to understand it. So my technology is called BINAC, BINACH, but it's a Mauvelese, so that's a French again, for this idea of taking several words and squeezing them together to form one word.
We call it in English a portmanteau.
Yes, which is another French word. So BINAC is a portmanteau of biotech, nanotech, and tech. Yeah. So BI from bio, NA from nano, and then the CH from the end of tech. And like a lot of the names or the words that I use in my books, it wasn't the first thing I came up with. In fact, I started talking about binotech or binatech. But over time, writing out binatech every time became too much, and so it got shortened.
It didn't.
And eventually it became binac, but almost through an organic process. And I think that kind of reflects the way language shifts anyway. So I think I discovered that process with binac, but then I applied it everywhere. So I would use a new term, and then I would use it for a while until I saw it shift. And then it's the shifted versions that I would eventually incorporate into the book.
Yeah. So when you were talking about how language drifts, that's something I've had to do a little bit of work on for my work that's set in the Arctic, because lots of things have names in the original indigenous languages, which have actually seen a huge shift in orthography over the years and centuries. So as I was researching just even things so basic as place names, I wanted to give them their indigenous name because, well, that's their name. But I didn't want to give them the 21st century indigenous name. I wanted what what a literate Indigenous Greenlander would have written that name as in 1875.
Right.
And that turned out to be a big problem. The Indigenous word for a non-Greenlander at the time was Halunat. And that's spelt Kabluna in the Western Arctic and Kavlunat in Greenland, and has a totally different spelling in Cumberland Sound. And it is, I think, disrespectful to take those, in fact, quite diverse cultural expressions and muddy them together. So I tried very hard to make sure I had the Greenlandic spelling for each of them. So thank you for watching, and we hope you'll join us for our next episode, which is something different. This was a brainwave we actually only had recently, to talk about visual storytelling, about illustration.
Right, illustrations and comic books and different kinds of formats of doing the storytelling in a different way. So we look forward to talking to you about it next time.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.